Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Karina from the MaturaExpress. It's English night tonight, and I'm gonna tell you something about extended answers. Now that the gap behind me has disappeared, welcome back. As I said, tonight's topic is or tonight's stream will be on how to give extended answers. So basically on how to avoid very, very short answers, single word answers, which you should not do in the exam, obviously, which is nothing new to you, I suppose. I hope that I can give you some input on how to do it, or some ideas on how to do it. First of all, I'm gonna clarify the... That's okay. Now you had this very colorful background, which is way nicer than mine. First of all, why do we need extended answers? I guess that is quite obvious. You have all done, or you all are doing a Matura course, and whoever your trainer is will definitely encourage you to speak in full sentences to him and her. It's sometimes not that easy. The main idea of extended answers, and also one of the major problems in the actual exams, is that if you don't, or if you aren't able to give extended answers, you do not fulfill probably the most important criterion in the 4 scales. I'm pretty sure you've seen the scales already, and there's kind of a point system, so you get points from 0 to 10 according to your performance. 0 is obviously the lowest one, and if you get 0 points in language production, basically, then there was not enough language to really evaluate the candidate on. So we're basically trying to answer the question, has the candidate produced enough language to evaluate? If you only answer in very short sentences, like subject, predicate, object kind of thing, then there won't be enough language input for your interlocutors to evaluate you on. And then it might not be 0 points, but 1 or 2 only. And that is very low in the language production scale. You have that in all 4. You have that in, well, you have it in task achievement, you have it in fluency and interaction, and you also have it in the 2 grammar and vocabulary scales. So if you don't produce enough to give you points on, basically, then this is a bad thing, especially because you need some kind of average in all the points. And if there's nothing to evaluate you on, obviously, you're gonna fail the exam. It is true that the second task of your exam is always a dialogue, which means that per definition, the interlocutor will say something as well. But then what he or she does is only giving prompts, answering questions to some extent, also asking you questions that you get you started again. But then it's not their exam, and they shouldn't produce all too much language. It should be you talking. So the interlocutor will definitely respond to questions if you ask them, or if you think about asking them. You should, because it's fluency and interaction, that's what the point is called. But then they won't talk an awful lot, and the major share of talking will be up to you. So if you don't produce enough language again, then, or if your English isn't good enough, or if your performance that day isn't good enough to respond to the prompts, then it will basically lead to the first point. There's not enough language to evaluate you on, to assess you on. And then, apart from, of course, producing enough language, extended answers give you the chance to elaborate on the point. Usually the elaboration of the point has 3 main features. The first one is usually an explanation. So if there's a term that you have to explain, that should happen in extended answers, obviously. You should, I don't know, topic on stereotypes and prejudice, for example. You have to explain what stereotypes are or what a prejudice is. Also give real-life examples. So a stereotype is about a country, our perception of what is typically, I don't know, typically English, typically German, whatever. And then, if possible, if it fits the topic, if it fits the bullet point as well, you should give an opinion. All that in extended answers, obviously. Probably in your courses, you have already met a grammar chapter, grammar vocab chapter, depending on how you see it. That is called linking devices and sentence starters and stuff like that. Linking devices are very frequently conjunctions that combine, I don't know, two main clauses or a subordinate clause and a main clause. You should know a few good ones. Like moreover, for example, like furthermore, if you want to avoid point number 1, so we are in presenting ideas and giving examples. How do I give examples? How do I present my ideas in a chronological order? That is important because I guess so. Chronology. Well, I hate computers. You need some structure in your talk. If you don't, and if your interlocutors do not know where in your presentation you are, what bullet point you're talking about, then this could be a problem, because first of all, it might be hard for them to assess you on the task achievement criterion, because sometimes it's not really sure if the candidate, or sometimes they are not really sure if the candidate really has touched upon all the topics. If you don't have enough structure, it might not be that obvious, especially because the interlocutors need to do so many things at the same time. They should do a dialogue with you, they should fill in the skills, and they should also come up with decently intelligent questions. So I guess the more clear you make it, the better it is for your own sake, I guess. There is some people who are fans of ordinal numbers as a structuring device. I'm not sure. I added the danger sign here because I'm not sure if starting every sentence or every new paragraph kind of thing with first, second, third, and so on and so forth is a good idea. To me, it sounds very much like an enumeration, and I don't know. I find it hard to believe that this is real language, and that's at the end of the day what the exam should be, or at least as close to real language as it gets in an exam situation. But in any case, you can use it at least once or twice, especially when you start with your bullet points as a first idea. I would like to mention, I think that lends itself perfectly. Ordinal numbers lend themselves perfectly here, because everyone knows that you gotta get started now, and that's, kind of in medias res of the exam kind of thing. But as I said, it's up to you whether or not you use ordinal numbers. You may also want to ask your trainers what they think about it. The whole enumeration thing is very much personal preference, I guess. Some more things that are meant to lend some structure to your speech or your talk is stuff like next or after that as a next point to start with. Something like that. So these are linking words that introduce new ideas or give examples. In the example thing, I gave you 2 entire phrases that you may want to have a look at, because sometimes, especially at the beginning of exams, like I've seen quite a lot of oral exams now in my life, and sometimes people find it nice if they have 1 or 2 almost finished sentences. You're not allowed full sentences on your keyword sheet. But if you have like a structure, at least for the start, I think that helps, because that gives you a good feeling, and it gives you this kind of, oh, well, I said something really intelligent now kind of feeling. And I guess that's good. I guess that gives you some security for the oral exams. Everything that starts well ends well normally. So if you're probably doing trial exams and stuff, you're kind of fake Matura exam kind of thing, mock exams. If you're the type of person who needs some time to calm down in the beginning, like some some time to get into it, you may want to help yourself with like chunks of language, like set phrases kind of thing. But then you have the couple of sentences in the beginning that where you have to introduce yourself and stuff. They are there for the exact same purpose. You should like calm down and kind of settle into the exam situation, sorry. But as I said, some standard phrases, some chunks of language may help you, especially if you're not the biggest fan of oral exam situations. A good example of this is a current debate about gun laws in America. That's my example. Or as an illustration, because sometimes you should prove that you can kind of transfer theoretical concepts or theoretical knowledge into the real world, like into issues that are going on at the moment. So as an illustration, I would like to mention the current discussion about, and then, you know, something that is going on in the media. If you have a topic that is something like current, something that you can talk about, or where you can give examples. So I'm gonna try and spell it correctly this time. I'm so glad you pointed out that I can write on this thing. Made my life so much better. I'm not talking to myself, there's someone. Okay. Expressing purpose, reason and result. Purpose is the English word for Zweck, reason for Gründe, and result for like outcomes. What is the German word for result? Resultate, that's what it is. For expressing purposes, so basically saying why something happens or why this is useful. You have several structures, several linking words that I'm sure your interlocutors have introduced you to already. Probably the most famous one, in order to. In order to succeed in the exam, it is very advisable to study, or it would be very advisable to study the vocab. Big fan of vocab. So that is usually used with a past tense modal verb. I don't know. Why do I never write down examples? So that environmental laws could finally be set into practice, for example. So the could was the past tense modal verb for those of you who are not all too much into modal verbs. And the to plus infinitive to study, you have to take your time and find a place that you like, whatever. In order to express reasons, Gründe, we don't have that many options really. That's the classical because. There is people who say that you should not use it at the beginning of a sentence. I find that people do quite frequently also use it at the beginning of a sentence, but I guess that's, I don't know, an old grammar rule or an old style rule that has kind of been transferred into our times. As very much works at the beginning of a sentence in stuff like as plastic waste is one of the biggest problems in our times, we should, blah, blah, blah. Also usually done with a modal verb following somewhere, especially if you give reasons for something, or if you're trying to give like suggestions on how to improve situations that we don't know if they're like, if they can be put into practice. And to present results, as a result, with the result that, and resulting in. Resulting in is the only thing that you have to be a bit careful about grammar-wise. Because you need a noun after that. It's one of those grammar structures that's kind of always demand a noun. There was big protests in Germany in the last couple of days, resulting in a lot of violence on both sides. You have probably followed the news. So you need a noun, or in that case you have a quantifier before the noun, but in any case it's a noun. So be careful with the resulting in, with the result that, and as a result are. As a result. Can I say as result? No, I can't, can I? So as a. result, always the result that. Can I say as result? No. Okay. The voice from the off says no, so I'm gonna believe him. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Ignore him. You are all hopefully familiar with one of my favorite grammar chapters, actually. Find it quite sad that there is no stream on relative clauses, because I think they're really nice. Relative clauses, in order to give or make extended answers, is a quite obvious thing. We should just make sure that we get them right. They are pretty easy, really. Like, the theory behind relative clauses is quite easy. But then I guess it's difficult to think about the rules in an exam situation. I think what happens quite frequently in oral exam situations is getting who and which mixed up. So here's a very, very brief summary of what relative clauses do. They either give extra information about something, or they join two sentences. If they give extra information about something, which is probably not so much of your concern, because you don't hear commas in speech, so I guess that's what we call Einschübe in German. So you give some additional information that is not super important, but, well, or you just join two sentences. Classic school book example, those of you who did a lot of grammar in their courses may have come across stuff like that. The usual task is you have two sentences, make one. You join them with who, which, that, whose, where, when, whatever, all the types of relative clauses that there are. Brief recap. Who is used for persons. So yesterday I went for a drink with Lizzie. Then we give some additional information on who this Lizzie is. Who is one of my best friends. Mr. Peters, who I like a lot, or whom I like a lot, went to school with my mum. There is this thing with the defining and non-defining relative clauses, but that is something that you probably need significantly more for like written exams or for text writing, so you may want to look them up, but this would be like too much for this stream. Maybe I'm allowed to do a stream on relative clauses at some stage. I'll tell you then and invite you to it. So who is used for persons, whereas which is used for things. The computer, which I bought a few days ago, is crap. Oh, I shouldn't use language like that on television, I suppose, or on screen. Anyway, the computer which I bought, the computer is a thing, so you could actually leave it out, because there is this great chapter on, what do I call context clauses? So that computer and I is not the same person, so you can, or not the same thing, so you can leave out the relative pronoun altogether. You can also use that, which is the way around the person or thing complication, but then it only works if it is a sentence without the two commas, so if it's not an Einschub. So you could not say, in my great example here, the lady, okay, that's not going very well, is it? The lady, comma, that is my, that secretary, comma, is from Dublin, does not work, so you can't use it in sentences that feature two commas. You can definitely use it in the two example sentences. The guy that sold me the PC is a crook, so a bit drüber. The book I read, or that I read, is boring. So then you have maybe the most difficult one. I think whose is the one that poses the most problems. It is what, it answers the question of wessen in German. So it is what we call Besitzanzeigen, so it expresses possession. My father, whose car? Mein Vater, dessen Auto ein Porsche ist ein exzellenter Fahrer. My father, whose car is a Porsche, is an excellent driver. So it always shows that something belongs to a person. I'm trying to think of an example sentence that you could use for your exams. Donald Trump, whose foreign politics bring him into considerable troubles or may bring him into considerable troubles, is, I don't know, still the president of the United States. I don't know, something like that. When is maybe not immediately recognizable as a relative pronoun, but it introduces additional information on time. So last year, when I was still in the States, it tells you where you were and when. And the same holds true for where. It expresses location. I went to school in London where I made loads of new friends, so it gives additional information on London. You could replace the second part of the sentence. Of course, I went to school in London where I went out a lot. I guess that's what you do when you go to school in London. Definitely. This was a tip from the two of us. Should you ever go to London, that's where.
The two of us.
Oh God, he's singing. So yeah, I'm glad you guys can't hear him, as my computer is doing weird things. Or it might be me. We're gonna have a very quick recap of what I said, and then we're gonna call it a night. We're gonna call it a day. So, as I said, extended answers are important. You are not allowed full sentences on your keyboard sheets. That means that you should help yourself with chunks of language because they give you some kind of security. Maybe there's no rules as to what you do on your keyboard sheet, like you can write down pretty much anything you want. Whatever you have on your keyboard sheet will not be graded, so if you write down a whole lot of linking words, that's fine. You won't get a worse grade because you're not able to remember them. That's okay. So if you need linking words, write them down during your preparation time, somewhere in the, I don't know, right or left-hand corner of your keyboard sheets, in a spot like that you're likely to look at during your exam, because then you may remember them. You also have highlighters, so you can highlight them. Well, that's what highlighters do, obviously. I would suggest you do that unless you're a very, very structured person and are very, very good at giving oral presentations. In any case, there are some people who are really good at it and who can also very well interpret the look on the interlocutor's face. Like sometimes they have this expression of like, what is this girl talking about? Or this boy. They can then kind of interpret and, you know, rephrase and put in or like just simply say where they are in the text and that they have moved on from one point to the other. Some people are not that structured, so you may want to write down a few things, because most important point to make here, you need to speak a lot so as for the interlocutors to be able to give you a fair grade as well, and in order to be, or in order to make it an exam that is comparable with others, I guess. Yeah, ordinal numbers or linking devices and sentence starters, there's a whole chapter on them in your books. Write down a few that you like, write down a few that you're able to remember or that you're likely to be able to remember in an exam situation. I guess things are a bit more complicated when you're nervous and you don't remember stuff that easily anymore. Write down a few chunks, they help you to get started again. They're something to hold on to in case you get lost. Use relative clauses, that's I think a very good strategy. If you use any linking devices that need a special grammatical structure, make sure you know them in case of the resulting in plus noun or the so that and the past modal verb, which is not obligatory, but that's just very much what it is like in practice. Yeah, and that's the relative clauses kind of thing. Remember the who and which. As I said, there will be maybe, I don't know, a stream on that. That was it from my side. If you have any questions, let us know. Comments and so on and so forth. If there's anything you want to know on linking devices, let me know. If not, we see each other again next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much and good night.